Welcome to a place where creativity speaks louder than words. While we often rely on our thoughts to guide us, this podcast invites you to explore how art, music, and movement can connect us more deeply with our emotions and bodies in ways we never imagined.
Join us as we dive into the world of art and music therapy and discover how these creative tools can foster emotional and physical well-being.
We are Magdolna, an artist, art therapist, and life coach,
And Aleksandra, a musician and music therapist, your hosts on Creativity Embodied podcast. So, let's get those creative juices flowing.
Hey there, and welcome to our very first episode. We are so excited to finally share this with you. Aleksandra and I met almost 3 years ago, and right from the start, our conversations naturally went really deep. Like, no small talk here. We would dive into our work, our experiences, and all the ups and downs of our personal and emotional journeys.
At some point, we started saying we should really be recording this because there were so many insights we thought could help others. And that's how this podcast was born, turning our coffee and tea dates into a space where we share our thoughts and stories about music, art, and music and art therapy with you.
So grab a drink, get comfy, and let's jump into this first pilot episode.
So, Magda, I'm very excited we get to speak like this today because we known each other for some time. We talk about our work often and we share our approaches and ways of seeing things and overlaps in the therapies that we do. But I feel we never really talked solely about these topics in a quite focused way like we're going to do now. So, my first question for you would be when was the first time that you heard about art therapy? And what was your idea about it back then? And now, fast forward to today, what are your thoughts on it now? How has your view of art therapy changed over the years?
So first of all, I want to say that I'm very happy that we are doing it this way. And yeah, I think that we never talked about it so focusedly, no? So in details, but I feel that we always talked about so many topics in such a profound way since the first day we met. And that was actually one thing that connected us really deeply, that possibility to connect and talk openly and being very vulnerable with each other since day one. So yeah, for me that was and still is something that I really appreciate and cherish, and I'm glad to have someone in my life like you to be able to talk about these things in such a profound way. So now let's back to the question. So basically, I first heard about art therapy. I think it was in 2016 after my Happy Family exhibition in Dubai. So in this exhibition, I basically used my old family photos, black and white family photos, as a starting point to develop a series of artworks. So basically, these photos, I'm sure that you know this and that your family used this as well, as were like mise en scene, like perfectly staged photos with people posing in very elegant clothes
Serene
with a perfect
faces,
smile.
right?
Very much, yeah, pretending that everything was perfect. But we know that behind those smiles, the reality was very different.
Mm.
So basically, this series of artworks I used to, in a way, work on my relationship with certain family members. And this process helped me to heal some of those relationships and some wounds that I had, for some times. And to be honest, like back then, I wasn't really consciously thinking about art therapy because, to be honest, I didn't know that it existed.
Mm.
I just felt there was something. I just felt that this was why my way of expressing my feelings and going through emotions. So, going back to the exhibition, what was really interesting is that when people were approaching my work and were looking at them, the interesting thing was that they weren't actually asking me about the story that was behind the series of the work, but they just started telling me their own stories.
Hmm.
And it was very, very emotional because it felt like they were going through some old memories and talking with their own family members. There were some tears, and really, it was like they were going through their own process. So for me, it was very emotional, as it was for them. And just the idea that someone can connect in such a deep way with my work made me think that there must be something else, beyond only the painting and the artwork of itself. So there, I was very curious to understand this relationship and this impact
Mm-hmm.
that basically artwork has on the person who looks at it, because I knew that it had a huge impact on me. So I knew that there was something else, and I just wanted to experience it more.
Yes, I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been so impactful to them if it weren't so impactful on you?
Hmm. Good question. One part of me would say yes, because everyone reflects their own stories in the artwork that they see. So basically, to them, there was nothing about me there.
Mm.
They didn't know who was the kid on the photo, who were like men and women, and what was the story behind, and they didn't ask. And for them, it was just an image that provoked emotions and memories for them. So, and every people had different emotions, different memories, different thoughts about the same painting.
Mm.
So I would say no. Like one part of me would say no. On the other side, I said maybe yes. Maybe it could be because they still have like that emotional charge in them that maybe could be transmitted and felt. Did I
Yeah.
answer the question? Yeah.
And there's the second half of the question of how do you see art therapy now after so many years, after going through your education, after all the work and all the hours with your clients and really tapping deeper into it? How would you explain it now to yourself and to others?
Yeah, well, before going to that part of the question, that was the answer, I just wanted to also add another thing that led me to discover art therapy. So this was, let's say, the first part, and the second part was one consultation with my astrologist.
Wow.
That has been, yeah, she has been our family astrologist for some like 8 years now, or something like that. And it was interesting. In that period, we just started working together, and at that point, I was really eager to find out what was my purpose here in this lifetime, in my lifetime. So what is my mission? How can I contribute? Like, what am I supposed to do here
Mm.
and now? So interesting thing was that she suggested a path that could be like interesting for me, and path that connected helping people through art and through psychology, but not a traditional psychology or psychotherapy, something that has to do with art.
Hmm.
So some combination. She didn't know like what was it, what could that be, because she herself didn't know anything about art therapy, but she's just like, I think it has to be something with these two things that could help you, express yourself and go towards your mission and just help people in general. So after that, I started like looking up on the internet, connection art therapy, and of course, the first thing that came up was art
Of
therapy.
course.
So of course, so for me it was a clear sign. Okay, this is something that I'm supposed to do and that I want to do.
Mm.
So looking back, basically, I see this happy family exhibition, some kind of my personal unconscious step into art therapy. And as it was a healing process for me, it really opened a lot of doors, for helping people like doing this thing that I do, basically. And art therapy since then has been a really meaningful part of my emotional and healing process,
Mm.
and part of my self growth. And I'm really passionate about it now. And can you repeat the second part of the question because I forgot about
No,
it?
no, so no worries. It's now with the perspective you have today, what do you see as our therapy being? Like, what would be the kind of the definition, or what are all the aspects that the art therapy takes in, that like aspects that maybe you were not aware of back in the day when you first encountered or first start thinking about artist therapy or art therapy?
To be honest, like now when I think about art therapy, I think about emotional expressions. So, and first thing that comes to my mind is like emotions, emotions. Maybe that also because that was one of my huge themes,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that I'm very sensitive and I can feel all of the emotions, but my process was that I started rationalizing them
Mm-hmm.
and being very like mm, very well in describing how am I feeling, why am I feeling, being able to communicate
Yeah,
and
label.
talk about
Mm.
emotions. Yeah, very, very much. But I was not actually allowing myself to feel certain emotions, like those uh, unquote, let's say, negative emotions, but not negative in the sense like those not so um, pleasant emotions
Mm-hmm.
and not socially acceptable ones. So now for me, like art therapy is really a tool, a method for a free expression of all of the emotions and integration of all of the processes that we are going through. Because what happens in in let's say in the this world of self-help or help in general, mental health, emotional health is that a lot of things are a lot of things um, are done only on a mental level,
Mm-hmm.
and we disconnect with our bodies, we disconnect with our emotions. So through our therapy I see this integration.
Yeah, where you participate, right, in your emotional world fully. This is
Yeah,
what I'm hearing.
fully. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, thank you. I feel like that wraps up your answer beautifully and kind of also brings focus on what you what you tackle the most in your approach in our therapy at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
I mean, there were many other topics, of course, but let's say that the main topic were always emotions, and still are,
Mm.
to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's the power of arts. I feel like we'll be tapping into this many times throughout the podcast,
Yeah,
anyways. Yeah.
yeah. So there is one question that I realized I never asked you,
Hmm.
and it is something that I would really like to know, and that is, how did you first discover music therapy?
So I think this was back when I was in high school. This is my earliest memory. So I was back in high school and I was figuring out what I'm going to study. And I had this huge fear around going for music because I thought it would be a very unsteady life path. So it was like, should I be studying something else and then do music? Or while I'm studying, I do music on the side and whatnot. But so I was considering many options. And then my dad told me about this University of East London because his high school friend was teaching there. And he's like, check it out, see what kind of music programs they have. And then I went online. I think it was like HTML back in the day. So I remember waiting for a very long time for that program to to upload on my screen so I can really see it. And then I was printing it also, and kept it in drawers for a while. And they had like a music performance major, maybe some other majors, and they had music therapy. So my first encounter was just reading through the curricula or the description of the curricula of music therapy, and it was absolutely unclear to me back in the day. Like, what does all of this entail? And then at some point, I remember reading an article about the Mozart effect, and this is how Serbian media back in many years ago, almost 20 years ago, would kind of introduce music therapy, which is just like a little speck of what it actually is. So then I had this idea, okay, music has these healing properties. If you listen to a particular thing, there's been research around it. So it was more about this kind of receptive aspect of music. And then at the same time, I was experiencing these more active properties of being in music and what it can do for you just as a musician and especially as a vocalist, because then you really participate in music with your entire body, but you also participate with your entire sense of identity, right? And all of your moods and emotional states and ideas of who you are in the moment or in the phases. And also I started writing music as I was exiting high school. And then when I would look back to the songs that I've written, it would really serve as a testimony of who I was, what I was going through. It was like this snapshot of me, of my life story, of my struggles or my big topics at the time. And at the same time, it was cathartic because once I would put it on the paper or I would write a song, it was just it would exit my body. So it was this healthy expression of the emotions, especially these right heavy emotions. I remember it was like a lot of gloom and doom kind of lyrics back in the day. um and then when I was studying at Berklee College of Music in Boston, they did have music therapy as a major, but these people were just so separated from everybody else. Like us, they were in performance or songwriting, or people that were in producing. We were kind of sticking together, but the music therapy people, because it was such a small group, and probably now that I know, it's such a specific relationship that you build with these people as you go through the process. They were really just this like little separate click in a way. So I didn't really they didn't really have a chance to speak to them a lot. But then my idea about what music therapy was expanded in terms of, oh wow, they're actually working in hospitals, because in the United States music therapy is quite present in the hospital setting. So wow, okay, they're working with veterans, they're working with people who are going through chemo, they're working with people that are in palliative care and stuff like that. So then I had a bit of a broader idea of what it is. And then when I really decided I wanted to study it, which was several years ago, I started interviewing music therapists. And then everything started becoming way more alive, because then I understood how sessions look like and what are all the different demographics that you can work with, what are all the different modalities that you can work with, um, from active to receptive, and kind of the spaces in between. So then my idea about, okay, what music therapy is and where it can go just blew up in proportions compared to how it was before. So that's a long story short of my encounter.
What a journey.
Yeah,
What a
quite a
journey.
journey. And it's interesting, that we myself and all of my colleagues, we've been in music so long, but then there's this aspect of it that exists, and probably you can make a parallel with artists, right? And visual artists,
Yeah.
right? Like you have this idea that that's there, but you don't have a really you don't understand the full scope of what all of that entails until you step into it, and then it really becomes alive and broad as it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like we all feel the healing part, the healing properties of both music and art, because we, on intuitive way, use it. But actually, when you start to understand better, like what is behind the concept of music therapy, art therapy, and how actually can be used to process uh, so many important themes, topics, traumas as well, and it really puts things in a much broader and bigger perspective.
Yeah, you kind of get
And
the
I think,
theoretical framework around the practices
yeah,
you've already done as an artist.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
you
yeah,
get the
for
data.
sure.
Yeah, you get the research
Yeah, yeah,
data
yeah.
that it is like that. It's been proven. Yes.
Yeah, and I think I believe that I can say for both of us that one of the of this podcast is actually to talk about these things, to talk about how the art and music therapy can really help you in a profound way, and that they are really like real therapists, let's call it like that, because sometimes what I encounter talking with some of the new clients is that they think that, for example, art therapy is are just some classes or sessions when you come and paint,
Yes.
like those
Yeah, that's
drink wine and paint or something like that, just to relax. And it's so
much more.
much
Yes.
more.
Yeah, and it's the therapeutic relationship, right, that distinguishes it. And we'll have an episode about that. But you're
Yeah.
right. I think it's important to to touch on this distinction between art as therapy or music as as therapy in terms of therapeutic, and art therapy and music therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I can talk about this for
Yes.
hours, but we're going to dedicate a separate
Yes.
episode for this
Absolutely.
one because it has a lot of
But
powerful
I
information.
I have now a question about you and your kind of two identities, the identity you have as an artist and then the identity you have as an art therapist. So when you're looking at the piece of a visual art, what does Magda the artist see and what does Magda the art therapist see, or how does she interpret it? And are there overlaps, are there distinctions? I'm curious.
Oh, so this is really a great question. So basically, when I look at the piece of visual art as an artist, I'm really drawn to the texture, to the materials, to the colors, lines, different shapes that actually come together. And I really focus on the medium. So, how the artist uses the paint or the clay or any other material to communicate beyond the words.
Mm.
So basically, I also notice the light, the perspective, the surface, and of course, the way how colors evoke certain emotions, because you cannot separate the two.
Yes.
So yeah, emotions are always there. So I'm
Mm.
also like looking at with this artistic eyes, but also trying to to see what emotions the painting or the artwork is evoking in me.
Mm-hmm.
So it is almost like certain conversation between peace and me,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm trying to get the idea of the intention behind the creation. And to be honest, like sometimes I read the description of the painting, but I read it after I've watched it because I want to see what can I see in it. And then after that, I want to see like how close did I get to what
Mm-hmm.
actually was the intention, from the artist.
And to kind of have it untamed, right? In terms of have no influence with
Exactly.
facts or information, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this could be also connected with the previous question the and the story about my series of Happy Family. When you asked
Mm.
about the influence, my personal influence on the work and on the audience that was watching. So I think the fact that they didn't ask about the information, the story about the work, let them had their own story that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't um, that didn't have any like shade of
Oh.
my experience.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't colored by my experience.
Yes.
Yeah. But when I look at the artwork through the perspective of an art therapist, I interpret it differently. Or let's say that I focus on a different things because I don't focus so much on aesthetic properties of the artwork, but I consider more the psychological, emotional, and also symbolic layers of the artwork. And I try to look beyond the surface, beyond what actually artist wanted to say,
Mm.
or even when he or she is writing or stating that, okay, I wanted to show this, but I'm actually trying to understand what is beyond that and how this artwork is reflecting the artist's inner world.
So it's almost like what I'm hearing is like seeing what the artist wanted to show, but at the same time trying to uncover what artist wanted to hide.
Yeah, it could be actually interpreted like that. It could be said like that, because sometimes we show something that we are not aware
Mm.
that actually is hiding in us, and this is actually what is happening in the process of art therapy. And some I see it with myself, but also with clients. Maybe you have at the beginning one uh, idea about the topic that you want to process, and even with the work, something that you have an idea what you want to present it in a certain way, but when you enter the process, usually or most of the times on the paper, what you show on the paper is something completely different, and you show what needs to be shown at that moment, what wants to be seen.
Yes, and you're tapping beautifully into the topic of the unconscious and the subconscious, right? And the power the arts have to bring that out in a more vivid way, I feel, than other.
Exactly, exactly. And in my own experience, I believe that we can tap in that huge container of unconscious information, memories, messages, emotions, pictures, sound, whatever,
Mm.
um, much more easily with the body movements, with sounds, with music, and with art. Like art in the sense like artistic expression, music expression, and with body movement, and not so easily with words, because you can sometimes, you cannot, words cannot reach to the all that content inside, so they're not enough as a tool to reach to that level of unconscious state. So we need something more,
Mm.
and we need something more that can trigger those information, and usually it's a sound, it's a movement, it's a color, it's something that moves the energy in your body and moves all the other content that's it inside of us.
And bypasses some of our defense mechanisms, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, to sum it up, I as an artist, I look at the final product,
Mm.
and as an art therapist, I consider more the process and story behind it.
That's a beautiful way to wrap it up. Yes.
Thank you. And
Mm.
so, again, talking about two identities, what I'm curious about is to hear how did your background as a musician and songwriter influence your approach to therapy?
So even before I went into studying jazz, which happened in high school, I was studying first classical because that's how your educational path goes as a musician. But there was always a part of me that wanted to change a little bit things, like not really read the everything that's on the paper, but maybe reinterpret things a little bit. So there was this part of me that was that wanted to color outside the lines, let's say.
I
So
love this.
to kind of go back into these metaphors. And then when I went into jazz music, it was a lot of like swing and straight ahead jazz, and this kind of traditional type of jazz, which I had a lot of respect for. And I understood that I needed to learn the basics, but I knew that that wasn't my final genre, so to say. And I really loved a lot of gospel music, so music that's highly spiritual. And when I was in the States and when I got to really witness this music with choirs in Baptist churches, and when I started to understand what music means to them, what it does to them, and this discipline and ritual that they have with music, in terms of that they go there every Sunday and they participate and partake in music for hours and hours, whether that being in a choir or being in the band where you always play a different instrument because one day the drummer didn't come, so you were a bass player last week, now you're a drummer, kind of a
Wow.
situation, or the people who are are there and also partaking and singing. And so that was something that was really, really profound. Um, gave me this profound message of just how music can get into every pore of not just a person, but also a community. Because there was such a glue that was holding this community together. So gospel music was something that I really, really loved. Um, and then there also there's a lot of improvisation. So jazz was improvisational. In gospel you have a lot of improvisational moments. In soul music, that I also love, a lot of that as well. And then when I started writing music, I was always putting parts that can be reshaped or done differently every time I sing them or every time the band plays them. So there was always this element of, there is a structure, but then there's always space for improvisation. And this is how I approach all of my therapy sessions. And this is kind of what we talked about a lot in the studies that I've gone through, is that you really need the structure, but you cannot blindly hold on to it. You need to leave this space for improvisation. So definitely,
Amen.
yeah,
Amen to that.
amen, right? And I'm sure you see a lot of parallel there as well. So there was definitely, so in terms of like how you approach things and how you do things, the know-how in a way, in both aspects, definitely there is a pattern that I'm following there. Then also the things that I use or the modalities that I use. I really prefer improvisation as a tool. And oftentimes the clients that I have, whether that be a group, ends up liking that the most. Even though I don't, I feel like I did not impose it. I did offer a variety of options, but then it ended up being the favorite activity. And then also with my one-on-one clients, the topics that they came to me with, turned out that improvisation would be the best tool to kind of unpack them, tackle them, process them. So a lot of this, yeah, I would say improvisation is maybe the glue that binds me as a musician, as a songwriter, and as a music therapist at the same time. I would say when I look back on the music that I was listening and the messages that I was listening, there is certain type of music that I really loved when I was younger, but now the lyrics feel so superficial that
What
that
you
a
mean?
part of me just cannot connect to them anymore. It's more like this wonderful memory and this trip like through time that happens when I listen to this music, and I kind of get to remember who I was at the time. So it has this memory triggering power. But a, like over a decade, I would say, I really started paying attention of like what are the messages of the songs and of the artists that I'm listening to, that are being conveyed. Especially the more I was focused on writing my own lyrics and what am I expressing there. Um, then I had the same criteria towards what I'm listening to at the same time, because that's the input, right? In order to have the output, you need to have the input. So pay attention to your input, kind of a thing. And then more and more, my own songs were serving as this tool of introspection, of telling myself the some of the life's wisdoms and things that I wanted to acquire, let's say, or to process. But a lot, like I would say, my first album was quite introspective. um, and then I feel because of that I can help my clients approach their songwriting in that context as well. So maybe that's also an important bit that informed my songwriting skills or my songwriter identity, so to say. But then at the same time, my music therapist identity, as you probably know, like it's hard to
Yeah,
separate the two. They're constantly feeding into each other. Like
they are.
they cannot be two separate silos. They're intertwined like two branches. So yes, that's the that's been the journey. So let's see where I get in years to come. But yeah, this is where I am right now.
Oh, I love it. And I can actually connect to both of it. And when you said to interpretation, as I'm a very structured person and that likes everything to be in a certain way, for me, art therapy, the process of working with myself, but also with the client, helped me to allow myself more of flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
more space to play
Yes.
and to just let go of certain expectations and just be open to whatever needs to be presented in a way that it needs to be presented. So it's quite a healing journey and process, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm still in the process, and I feel that I will probably be
Oh,
for
we're
the rest of
always in the
my
process.
time.
Yes. The process
Yeah,
never stops.
yeah.
Yes. But speaking of this duality, um, how would you kind of describe in terms of when you are in your artist mode, who are you then? And then when you're the art therapist, who are you there? Feels like you're more playful when you're an art therapist, from what you just shared.
To be honest, I'm in the a journey of trying to be more playful in both
Hmm.
areas, but not also as being an artist, art therapist, but actually including our playful way of being in all aspects of my life. And I really strongly feel that this education in art therapy actually helped me connect so much more with my inner child
Mm-hmm.
that was always very much obedient and very, how do you say, like a perfect kid.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, this actually allowed me to let this kid play and to be dirty and to be disobedient and just to be a kid.
Mm.
So, yeah, this aspect of a game and playfulness has been really important to me. And I'm trying more and more to tap into this zone, into this energy, both when I'm being an art therapist, but also when I'm being an artist. Because
Mm.
I think, and being like art and artistic expression really helps helps us to connect with the inner child. And I think that is the moment when we are like the, the, the closest, in the closest way connected to the kid inside of us.
Mm. Yeah, because we play. And yeah, and we kind of learned also that adults are not supposed to play, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. But you can be very professional, serious, independent, like in adult in every sense of the way, but still maintaining that playful child in yourself and pull that card whenever you need it. So
Yes.
you can be both.
For
Yeah.
people to understand that one thing does not exclude the other.
Exclude. Hmm.
Yes, so it's not like you're Phoebe Buffet if you're
Yeah.
creative,
Yeah.
right? Like you can have a
Yeah.
serious job
Yes.
and still play.
Yeah,
Yes.
I completely. I think again, this is our job, right? To
Mm.
also to show people that you can be both. You don't have to be weirdo, and just if you decide to be creative, you want to paint, you want to sing or play whatsoever, you can have it all.
Yes, and I feel it's beautiful also to see how that can then how you can translate that creativity in your work or in your life. Because I feel it can just change the way you see things or you approach things or you approach yourself, right? You were mentioning this thing of allowing the process to happen, not hinder yourself, not judge yourself. And I feel accepting that as a way of being equals to a very nice life.
Yeah, very fun life as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, very
and I think we
free life at an end, responsible at the same time.
at the same time. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, completely agree. And let's say to wrap it up for today, because we can
Hmm.
talk about
Yeah,
these
we
topics.
can go for hours. We know this.
We can go on and we can go on. But let's say the last question that I want to ask you is what personal insights have you gained from your work as a music therapist?
Hmm. I would say I have now this new knob for fine tuning my perception, and it can be
Nice.
my perception of myself, and and also tapping more into the sound, like when I'm speaking. If I really pay attention to the way that I'm speaking and what's the color of my voice and what's the pace that I'm speaking with, it's like, okay, what is my voice saying about me right now? So is this using, right, all of these sound elements that we have, that we use as everyday tools to communicate and to be in the world, to kind of check upon ourselves. So it's like you check your pulse of your soul through the sound that you make. That can be in the way that I speak, but also it can be musically. Okay, I sounded like this today with this song. What does that say about my state right now? So
Wow.
it's that, but also it's a way that I can also perceive others or build communication with others. And I would say just this enhanced nonverbal communication that comes with being so active in nonverbal, as you also know,
Mm,
um, just changes the way of how you perceive and then how you come to certain spaces. So I feel it's both the insights, but then the behavior that is the consequence of these insights, or the behavioral change, let's say, that's a consequence of these insights. I would say that's the main thing. And what's interesting, parallelly, while this was happening, I was living in different places where I did not really speak the language as well.
hmm.
So I had to really rely on nonverbal to just go around my day and to really understand someone's intention. So a lot of my attention has been in pre-verbal, paraverbal, nonverbal, like all of these other cues apart from the actual words that are being spoken. So I feel in my last 3 years have been basically that, a lot of nonverbal elements, and tapping into that both intrapersonally and interpersonally.
Oh, I really love it. I love it. I like very much the topic of awareness, being present, mindfulness, and I think that is something that can really help us go through this life in really um, meaningful way.
Mm.
And it gives us so much more possibilities to connect with ourselves, but also with the people around us in on a deeper level. Just when we are aware, present, and awakened.
Life is richer. Like there's
Yeah,
more
yes,
richness of life
more
when we
juice.
live moments. Yeah, there's more juice,
We
there's more
do.
juiciness when we live through life like that. And I feel that's the attention is one of the, or rather presence than attention, the currency of today in a way.
Yeah, we talk about it, and we're here talking about it in very different context, and maybe sometimes say, yeah, yeah, you need to be present. Yeah, mindfulness concept, and it's heard so many times, but actually, there's a reason why.
Yes, and it's a challenge of today because the distractions are everywhere. Yes, we've kind of reached the end. of our session. But I'm very happy we got to kind of ask questions to each other that we didn't have a chance to ask during our many meaningful coffee dates and tea dates.
And online coffees and
And online coffees, yes.
online
And
chats.
at the same time, kind of present where we're coming from that's beyond um, the schools and experiences that we had, but more in terms of where we're coming from in our approaches, in our minds, in our intentions.
Yeah, I really liked talking to you today in this format. And I feel it's just like continuation of our chats and conversations, deep conversations that we have been having in the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
And now to finish this episode, Alexandra and I would like to ask you a question to give you something that you can think about until the next episode.
And that would be, what is your favorite form of self expression? And how has it shaped the way that you see yourself as well as the world around you? So ponder upon it. And if you feel inclined, would love to also hear your answers. So you can um, leave your comments in all the online spaces where we exist.
So, in the description of this episode, we're going to leave you all the links uh, where you can find us, where you can write us. So, all the social media profiles, pages, websites, email addresses. So, feel free to write to us if you have any questions or topics that you like to us to cover, or if there is a particular answer you're looking for. Just feel free to leave them in the comments or DMs on Instagram, for example, and we might just answer them in one of the upcoming episodes.
Thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment below with your thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes.
You'll find links to our social pages, websites, and email in the episode description. So feel free to connect with us there too. Keep being creative, and we'll see you in the next episode.